Dude, him
Dude.
versus Pereira-Gane, that's very interesting.
For sure. And I know the power is going to translate over to heavyweight. That's not going anywhere.
100%,
He'll be able to
man.
flatline heavyweights.
100%, especially with zero weight cut.
Yeah.
Talk about that. That co-main event, Pereira-Gane taking on Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira.
Yeah, but stop it right there, though, too, Kamaru. I even think that's wrong. I think there's so many contenders at light heavyweight for Pereira to go through. I just feel like there are still a lot of names to be taken out before there is a big matchup at light heavyweight. But I also get it.
There was one name.
Well, there's a lot, man. There's Oldberg, who he's never fought. Of course, he could beat him.
Yeah, Oldberg.
There's Hamzat Chimaev. If he defends that title at
Hamzat's not there yet. So right now, there's only one guy.
But it was something in the making where they're both kind of tweeting to each other or whatnot. And then two, I think even fighting for an interim title, I think if anything, and then just check this out. If you are going to fight for that third belt, it's got to be the undisputed belt, man. It takes a little bit of what being a triple champ is, and then he's also going up against a dude that was already popping up the undisputed champ. So, I can see where the odds are actually coming from. So I just feel like if Pereira was to stick around at light heavyweight a little bit more, fight undisputed right away. No more interim, none of that. He just waits and he's granted that.
I'm trying to understand. So you're saying that he should be granted that only if he sticks around light heavyweight a bit longer?
I would say a fight or two, yes.
But Henry Cejudo, you're asking Alex Pereira to hang around for what could be, for maybe Hamzat comes up or not. Maybe
and maybe not Hamza. What I'm trying to tell you is you take your chances. You take your chance.
Gane on Poton, bro. I think it'll be a fun fight. I think Gane shoots on Poton though. A lot of people think it's just gonna be kickboxing, but I think Gane might try and switch it up for him, like how Francis Ngannou did to Gane. Tripped him out, confused him a little,
I'm not counting Alex Pereira out here because Alex Pereira does have the power to really change things. And listen, he is definitely, your confidence is at his all-time high. Listen, no one can tell you anything about your abilities and what you can or can't do. Because if that was the case, then we felt this way when Alex Pereira said he wanted to go to light heavyweight. We felt this way. We don't know how he would do. Now he dominated that weight class. So I'm not going to feel that way about him going to heavyweight, especially when that heavyweight division right now is kind of struggling with the depth in the talent that they have. So I think this is a good thing for that heavyweight division to throw Alex Pereira in the mix there. Now you've got Tom Aspinall. Now you've got Pereira-Gane. You've got Alex Pereira. Not to mention you've got Waldo Acosta. So there's guys there. You still got Curtis Blades in there. There's guys there. So I get it. I like it. But listen, this card, I like it.
Fight, obviously, Alex Pereira going up to heavyweight is something that's been long discussed, and I guess the big thing is, like, is he going for history? Is he not? It's the interim belt. Like, if he wins this fight, are you going to consider him the first 3-division UFC champion, or does he have to get undisputed?
I would.
Yeah?
I would. I absolutely would.
Even though it's interim.
I mean, like, interim, like, yes, like, the difference is just putting a word in front of it. But it's like Pereira-Gane is still champion. Well, and that's another thing too, right? What we have to find out is Pereira-Gane championship level material. Like, skill wise, I do believe he is, but mentally and just emotionally and with his entire being, is he championship level material? And that's what we want to find out, because we've seen him lose against Francis, where he went in the fight but just made the silly mistake at the end, and then we saw him completely lay an egg against John Jones, and that's not championship level material, but he's seemed to have matured into it. Now, when he was fighting Tom Aspinall, he showed championship level material fighting, even though it was a little dirty. And that's another thing. Can he fight cleanly with championship level material behind him? And that's what I want to see from him. But because he hasn't really shown that in the past, again, that kind of
The combat sports world is going completely insane right now. Everyone's scrambling to make sense of something that felt absolutely unthinkable just a few months back. We're looking at Alex Pereira and Pereira-Gane, two of the most lethal strikers from different universes, about to throw down in what's becoming this massive collision at the highest level. Trust me when I say this, not a single person saw this coming. Here you have two world-class strikers who've been crushing it in their own lanes, building their own legacies, and now they're on a collision course for what's turning into one of the wildest and most shocking fights in combat sports memory. The technical striking versus raw power dynamic makes this even more captivating. When you listen to experts and former champions breaking this down, their takes are everywhere. The big question everyone keeps asking is simple but loaded. Can Pereira's game-changing knockout ability overwhelm Gane, or will Gane's slick footwork and precision striking be exactly what it takes to shut down Pereira's dangerous game?
They have to make do with what they have. They would have loved to have Jones on there, but I hope Alex wins. That's crazy. Like 3 times. Yeah. Gane's no joke, and Gane can dance around him. Gane's slick to knock him out as well, but I think Alex can knock him out too.
Looking forward to this insane clash between Pereira and Pereira-Gane for the Interim Heavyweight Championship. Charles Oliveira thinks this fight might end up meaning way more than anyone's giving it credit for, and when you really think about his logic, it starts making perfect sense. He brings up this fascinating scenario where if Pereira walks away victorious from this war, but then for whatever reason the unification fight with Tom Aspinall just never comes together, maybe it's timing conflicts, contract problems, medical issues, or any of those behind the scenes complications that have killed massive fights in the past, then all of a sudden that interim championship starts looking a lot more like the real deal. Consider this possibility. The super fight everyone's demanding could keep getting pushed back until it just fades away, leaving Pereira sitting there with what's technically called an interim belt, but realistically functioning as the true heavyweight champion. When you look at how these things have played out before, there's definitely a legitimate chance this exact scenario unfolds, and it's worth keeping in mind as fight night approaches.
That interim belt gets promoted to undisputed at some point. Now the other side of the coin, if you can't, let's just say Alex wins, right? And I'm not trying to pan surreal, but for the sake of the hypothetical that we're laying out here, let's say that Alex wins and you can't end up making the fight with Tom. Whether Tom's hurt or Tom's going down a dangerous road that I've seen before. It's a very dangerous road where I want to fight anybody. I can't believe this. You're the promotion. Bring me that guy. I deserve him. Bring me that son of a bitch. Make him do it. You got a contract with him. Lock us in the cage and let us do this.
That classic fighter mentality, the one where warriors would step up against anybody anywhere without thinking twice. Well, that's been shifting in major ways throughout the entire sport. Charles takes his breakdown even deeper, dropping this reality check about exactly how these dream super fights can fall apart before our eyes. According to his experience, that fearless bring anyone on attitude that separates real champions from everyone else can slowly change and evolve when other people start influencing a fighter's choices, with managers, business advisors, and promotional teams pushing fighters towards safer opportunities, different matchups, and creating doubt about taking big risks. He says this is a cycle he's watched play out over and over during his time in the game, where what should be the straightforward concept of settling who's best in the Octagon becomes this messy situation full of postponements, business negotiations, and roadblocks that can stretch out for months or even years. Even though he believes Pereira still has that authentic fighting spirit and warrior DNA that brought him this far, the real threat hanging over everything is that no matter who wins between Pereira and Gane for this interim title, the heavyweight division might get stuck in this frustrating holding pattern, completely frozen. If the true undisputed champion, whether that ends up being Aspinall or whoever else, never actually steps into the cage for that unification fight everyone's waiting for,
and that attitude has changed from outside forces that have grabbed a hold of him, convinced him of the potential wrongdoings, and convinced him of a potential greener pasture. This is not new. I have seen this a million times. I'm just sharing for you the beginning, scratching of the surface of that changing of your mind, and all of a sudden not put us in there and let us figure it out. I got a contract, he's got a contract, not this competitive and wonderful attitude. The beginning surfaces have been laid. And Alex Pereira doesn't have them. Alex Pereira is a competitor. And there is a scenario where Alex wins. There's a scenario where Surreal wins.
So we can't make it happen. This adds another complicated layer to figuring out the undisputed champion situation, throwing even more fuel on an already burning debate. Henry Cejudo thinks the road to heavyweight gold is becoming way more twisted and difficult than it should be right now. He's asking some tough questions about whether the size difference and natural power increase could turn into a real problem for Alex Pereira to navigate, especially against someone like Gane, whose smooth movement and elite striking skills make him incredibly difficult to pin down and nearly impossible to catch with clean shots. Even though Cejudo totally recognizes and gives props to Pereira's unreal knockout power, which nobody can argue with at this point, he's quick to remind people of something they forget when they're watching knockout highlights. Pereira takes damage and absorbs more shots than fans realize when they're mesmerized by his finishing ability. At heavyweight, that room for mistakes gets smaller and more dangerous in a hurry, which creates real questions about whether that aggressive trade shot for shot approach that made Pereira famous can actually work against naturally bigger, stronger opponents who can handle his power better than the light heavyweights he's been destroying. Are you telling me he needs to hold off
to challenge Tom Aspinall for the undisputed?
Yeah, because now look. Now he's going after two big dogs in order for him to become champion, rather than just one. You know what I'm saying? You can make history off of one.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
You fight two to become the first 3-division champ. It changes, man. Because I don't think he gets past Pereira-Gane. I think that weight is real. You know, and Pereira-Gane, he's a stick and move guy. Could he 100%. Anybody, in particular in that division.
Okay.
But nobody has really finished Pereira-Gane, bro, and his movements is very problematic. I just don't see any wrestling from him, which Pereira could have some, but the dude can thump, dude. And I will say this too, Pereira also does get hit Kamaru. Now, can you take a heavyweight's punch? Look at that little highlight that a little practice that they had with that big Cuban. Cuban was bigger than him, heavier than him. Dude, he was popping off on the dude that got cut by the UFC. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying is size does matter. And that's a fucking pop.
supporting that exact analysis that Cejudo laid out. Kamaru Usman co-signs the breakdown, but takes it in the direction of looking at Pereira's overall career path and what makes the most strategic sense. Usman thinks there's basically nothing meaningful left for Pereira to accomplish at light heavyweight right now, except maybe a showdown with Carlos Ulberg, which could be fun but wouldn't exactly be a career-defining moment. From his perspective, staying in that weight class doesn't add up strategically, especially when you consider Father Time catches everyone eventually, the punishment of brutal weight cuts that become torture as fighters age, and this rare chance to make history and earn life-changing money by jumping to heavyweight, where the biggest opportunities and spotlight live. Usman highlights something really smart here. The heavyweight landscape that Pereira is entering isn't exactly loaded with world-class talent at the championship level right now, which makes this move even smarter from a realistic standpoint. It creates the possibility of a surprisingly quick rise to divisional supremacy if everything aligns properly and Pereira can get past Gane in his heavyweight introduction.
To agree with you there on that one, Henry, but make no mistake, like as far as sticking around at light heavyweight, the only guy that he would be sticking around for is Carlos Ulberg. And just if he knocks off Ulberg, there's absolutely no
which is a given.
Yeah.
Which is a given is what I'm trying to tell you.
Okay. Yes, okay. So you can't say, oh, I'm gonna stick around for maybe Hamzat or anything like that. No, he's already, and plus he's getting older. You know, why do I want to stick around? I want to make history and I want to get paid. And plus, I don't want to cut this weight anymore. So F that. I'm going up.
But that's an entrance.
I'm going up to a weight class. I'm going up to a weight class that is struggling right now at the top 5. He's struggling at the top 5. Look at that. What's
It's
going
almost
on right now in that heavyweight division?
It's almost like the
So,
heavyweight
this is
division.
great.
Almost like the heavyweight division became the new. It's like the new flyweight division. Like there's probably more buzz about the flyweights.
Returning to Cejudo, who continues the in-depth breakdown and really examines the technical obstacles. He's emphasizing how completely different this test will be for Pereira at heavyweight versus anything he's dealt with previously. He mentions that even during Pereira's run at 185 pounds in the middleweight ranks, guys like Khalil Roundtree and Israel Adesanya managed to connect with solid shots and find success in striking battles. And now he's taking this enormous step up into a division filled with fighters who pack the devastating knockout power of Francis Ngannou and the slick movement and strategic brilliance of Pereira-Gane. It's no longer about eating punches and walking through punishment like he did at smaller weight divisions, where his granite chin and toughness were huge weapons. Cejudo emphasizes this critical element. Heavyweights like Gane don't just stand there like sitting ducks waiting to get knocked out. Their blend of championship-level technique, beautiful lateral movement, and advanced fight intelligence turns every moment of action into a complex riddle that has to be figured out instantly. This makes Pereira's heavyweight transition not only a showcase of his famous knockout power, but just as much a test of his ability to evolve, adjust his rhythm, sharpen his defensive skills at a new size, and whether his frame can deal with the reality of battling much bigger athletes.
But look at it this way too for Alex Pereira at 185 pounds, dude. Khalil Roundtree packed him up a little bit. Yeah, he did finish him, but Khalil Roundtree got them hands on him. Israel Adesanya knocked him out. You know what I'm saying? Now you're talking about Francis Ngannou power. Now you're talking about a real big heavyweight. I mean, bro, things change, man. I even told this to John. That John wasn't to submit Pereira-Gane. I'm like, bro, that's your biggest threat, man. Even ahead of Francis at that time when Francis was there. And he was just like, why? It's because this dude's agile, man. Like he sticks and moves. He's not gonna. It's like playing cat and mouse with the heavyweight. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like Francis Ngannou. I mean, Pereira-Gane could fight back. His lateral movements. Like say, go back and watch that Tom fight. This is how he was able to puzzle Tom, because everybody comes here with Tom. You know what I'm saying? And finally, when somebody's just here with the movement, it's like, bro, he's not a stationary target no more. It's not just based on power.
Looking at strategy and game planning, when we examine what comes next after this fight unfolds, Tom Aspinall keeps his stance pretty direct and professional. He says he's totally cool with whatever happens in the Pereira versus Gane showdown. He's not picking sides in this one, but he does mention there's still some unresolved history between him and Gane from their past meetings and how their careers have intersected in the division. In his mind, if Pereira emerges victorious and claims the interim heavyweight championship, the smart move forward is obvious from a competitive angle. Face Pereira first in the unification war, then handle business with Gane later in what would probably be a title defense or #1 contender bout. This strategy keeps the long-term vision of the heavyweight division and his own title goals on track and progressing instead of getting stuck in promotional politics. Aspinall brings some clarity about the timeline for when he can actually return to action, breaking down that with Gane now locked in as Pereira's dance partner instead of the John Jones fight that was floating around earlier. The heavyweight division doesn't exactly have a bunch of ready options for him to face while he's healing up. He explains he's just in this recovery phase, waiting for medical approval to get back to full training intensity without limitations. Once he gets that official thumbs up from medical staff that he's cleared to compete at maximum capacity, he'll immediately alert UFC management so they can set a firm fight date with whoever wins between Pereira and Gane. From his viewpoint, it's simply a matter of getting medical clearance and the go-ahead to train properly again, and then the next major fight happens organically, keeping the road to the undisputed heavyweight championship clear and stopping the division from getting stuck in neutral. Moving to legendary heavyweight Alistair Overeem, who drops his expert perspective on the matchup, thinking that when you analyze the fighting styles, the contest might lean slightly toward Pereira for some particular reasons. He explains that Gane, despite being incredibly skilled and among the best technical strikers in the heavyweight ranks, is primarily a striker rather than a wrestler or submission threat who can create danger in different phases. This stylistic matchup flows more naturally into Pereira's strengths and the kind of battle he dominates, which is standing up and exchanging strikes where his power becomes the deciding factor. Based on Overeem's evaluation, this makes the fight not only thrilling from a fan perspective, but tactically favorable for Pereira from a matchmaking angle, creating the foundation for what should be an engaging striking war and potentially offering Pereira a cleaner, more advantageous route to winning the interim heavyweight title than if he faced a grappler or wrestler who could drag him to the ground. On the flip side, former bantamweight king TJ Dillashaw is completely pumped for the Pereira vs. Gane battle, describing it as incredible and even claiming it's superior and more compelling than a possible fight with Jon Jones would have been. He breaks down his logic while a Jones matchup might have been bigger from a star power perspective. Jones would probably have controlled the fight too easily using his wrestling and ground game to shut down Pereira's striking, making it less competitive than fans wanted. But Gane offers a legitimate striking test that challenges Pereira in the area where he's meant to be unstoppable, turning this into a real examination of whether Pereira's power can beat elite heavyweight level technique and mobility. From Dillashaw's analysis, it's building into a technical elite level stand-up war that'll be explosive, dynamic, and absolutely impossible to look away from because either fighter can finish it instantly. Expanding on Dillashaw's excitement, analyst Din Thomas brings his own viewpoint to the discussion, applauding Pereira's fearless jump to heavyweight and the real bravery it requires to take on a legitimate world-class test like Gane represents, instead of choosing an easier debut against a lower-level opponent. He describes it as a truly exciting matchup with real stylistic drama that should deliver entertainment, but he explains exactly why it falls just short of his highest tier of the most significant fights happening in mixed martial arts currently. There's this underlying Tom Aspinall situation looming over everything, with the undisputed heavyweight champion observing and waiting on the outside, which reduces the fight's total impact on the division, even though it stays a completely must-watch battle for serious fans and mainstream audiences equally. Even so, Thomas maintains that the action and importance inside the Octagon make it a contest that could genuinely shape Pereira's entire legacy and future at heavyweight, particularly if he can overcome this extremely challenging test. Thomas extends his analysis, going deep into the historical importance and meaning of Pereira jumping to heavyweight and what it represents for his position in MMA greatness. He explains that even though this contest is officially for the interim title instead of the undisputed championship, a victory would still establish Pereira as the first three-division UFC champion in his opinion and in history, because the interim designation is really just terminology, just business language that doesn't reduce the actual achievement of mastering three weight divisions. However, Thomas also stresses what he considers the more significant question marks surrounding this fight. Can Gane truly perform at championship caliber consistently? And we're not only talking about talent here because his ability is undeniable, but psychologically and emotionally when the stakes are at their peak. Remember some of Gane's previous disappointments that created these concerns, like losing composure and appearing tentative against Francis Ngannou in their championship fight, and failing to execute his strategy properly against Jon Jones when he had the opportunity to become champion. Yet Thomas acknowledges that Gane has demonstrated real development and progress since those losses, especially in his strong showing in the fight with Tom Aspinall before the injury ending, where he appeared focused and sharp. Still, Thomas warns that because Gane hasn't completely established his championship psychology reliably across multiple pressure situations, it somewhat limits how highly he evaluates this fight in terms of historical importance in his personal ranking. So what do you think about this absolute monster of a fight that's heading our way? Who are you picking to walk away victorious in this heavyweight war between two of the most dangerous strikers in the game? Share your thoughts in the comments section, and smash that subscribe button so you catch all the coverage, analysis, and predictions as we count down to fight night. Keep watching because this battle could genuinely transform the entire heavyweight landscape forever and change the championship picture in ways nobody can see coming right now.